Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Tearing It Up. We have another amazing guest. I have had quite the lineup lately. It's been great. And I've also been going kind of like back to back to back, which is a first for me to really have a lot lined up in a row. It's so fun to have these conversations, and then I look at the calendar, I'm like, "Oh, wait, you guys aren't gonna get to hear them for a little bit after I record." I try not to get super far ahead of myself so everything stays, really relevant to the conversation, what's happening, and what the our guest has going on, but it's just been really fun this last week, and I'm stoked to have this conversation today because it's starting off my day. A lot of the podcasts are in the morning, which I prefer because it's like kind of goes hand in hand with my cup of coffee, gets me amped up for the day. And I hope that these conversations do that for you guys listening, whether it's in the morning that you're listening or, on a run, hike, drive, whatever, that it can add a little bit of that like pep into your step wherever you're at in your day and just, yeah, motivate you to get out there and get after whatever it is for you that you want to get after. But today we have Jess of Take to Trail. I'm stoked to have this conversation because it's been a while since we've had someone on kind of talking more about recirculation. And guess what? Now that I think about when this episode might be live, it's gonna be right around that Earth Day, I think.
Ah,
And so maybe on some people's minds and whatnot. But Jess, I'm gonna turn it over to you. First off, will you let people know where you are physically in the world as we record today?
sure. So I'm Jess Parker. I am the founder of Take Two Trail. I am in Westport, Connecticut, which is about an hour outside of New York City, in a place with not a whole lot of trails to run, but the ones we do have are technical and will sometimes make you question your life choices.
I think you can find that anywhere. Sometimes maybe you just gotta find like, look a little bit harder to find those in some places versus others, but, uh, I take it you have found those trails.
I very much have, and any time that I am longing for the types of trails that you have in Tahoe and Colorado and basically the West in general, I remember reading one of the through hikers, what maybe it was Carl Meltzer, who had said that once you get to New England on the AT, you know what trail running really is. So it validates that even though I'm an East Coast person, my trail running might still be legit.
I love that. For me, since I'm not like a big runner, I think of it as skiing, and where people are always like, really comparing the East and the West. But when we talked before we recorded, you were chatting about, the West and your connection and love to it, and that, and I definitely want to dive into all of that. But I'm always wanting to jump into that story first before I really let the people know what the businesses that you have or not. So let's real quick, can you tell people what Take Two Trail is so they get an idea kind of like where this conversation will be going and what dots they'll be connecting along the way?
Sure thing. So Take Two Trail is a website that I've built to largely keep trail running goods out of landfills. And I am doing that in kind of a couple of different ways. I am purchasing runners' gently used gear or the things they just missed the return date on that is completely unused. I am going to races to do that. People can submit their items through the website. I'm also buying dead stock inventory from local trail running stores, from liquidators that service the business to business market. When you have, a store that went out of business and they might have a few pieces left over, or the new model of a shoe came out and a store is trying to kind of get rid of the last couple of the previous model that they were holding on to. And then I'm trying to make the sport a little bit less expensive for people to get involved in because it's not a cheap one. People have this perception that you just need to take a pair of sneakers and head out the door. But in trail running, particularly when you start getting into ultra distances, that's really not, it's not that simple. You have the need to be able to carry supplies with you. So you need a pack and you need a trail running shoe. And while the pricing of a trail running shoe in many cases falls somewhere between, like a carbon plated road shoe and a standard road shoe. $180 is nothing to sneeze at for someone
Yeah.
who is not sure they're going to do it more than one time. When you're going out for the experiment, it can be a very expensive experiment to prepare for 10 miles out on the trail for your first trail run. So, the long and short is keeping things out of landfills, making the sport more approachable for people, and trying to do it in a way that takes all of the headaches out of buying and selling on platforms like Facebook Marketplace, Poshmark, eBay, that are fraught with sketchy people in your inbox, meeting people in questionable locations, praying people show up, responding to 48 different posts, saying that they're interested in your item only to have no one reply when you're like, "Okay, and, like, do you wanna make a time to meet up?" So I'm really trying to solve for a lot of headaches and keep gear in circulation to reduce its environmental impact.
I love it. I really love that you mentioned the people think of trail running as a cheap sport to get into because you're like, "I just need a pair of shoes," and I think I hear that a lot in, like, my circles and whatnot because what you're comparing it to is mountain biking or skiing, which is thousands and thousands of dollars, where obviously that can range depending on what kind of gear you're buying, right? But bikes these days, that the ones everyone's riding or wants are like $5,000 these days is like a okay medium, I feel like bike. And it's like $8,000 bikes that are the, you know, like good, really top level. And you can go to 10,000 and it's insane to think that my $3,500 bike was like bottom of the the barrel, like the quote unquote like cheapest like version, like
Right.
what? But you get and that's a huge investment up front. Skiing again can vary depending on skis, boots, all that stuff. Plus, are you backcountry or are you at a resort? So you're talking about pass, travel, all of that stuff. So there's a higher upfront cost on those sports. And sure, you can go out your door and run, but to be comfortable, right? It's not quite as easy as, like, here's a $60 pair of shoes that are not meant to be out in this terrain. So you wanna start with something a little bit better because everything starts at your feet too. I mean, if your feet are hurting and uncomfortable, it's gonna throw everything else off too. And then if you get into it and you love it, well, it shoes don't have a long life cycle, and it's funny because it was kind of recently in the last couple years or something, my brother was having a problem with, what's that common foot
Plantar
problem?
fasciitis?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm just thinking like sciatica but, like, it can lead to that, all those pains, right? So, he realized he's, like, went to get a new pair of running shoes, and I think that's when he was maybe talking to someone, he's like, "I had no idea that, like, you should replace your shoes, like, this often or whatever." My shoes were, like, there's, like, no sole on the bottom, this, that, and the other. It's like, well, yeah, because we grew up in the '90s and early 2000s where you're wearing your, like, holy Vans to school every day or something, right? We're not really thinking about our foot health, and so when you break it down, running shoes only last a few hundred miles, and depending on how bad you're beating them up, so that 180 bucks can be happening multiple times a year.
And the likelihood that you're going to find the shoe that is like your preferred trail running shoe on the first try
Yep.
is also pretty limited. And
Yeah.
depending on, your timeline between when you're like, I want to try trail running, I'm going to buy a trail running shoe, and you do that and you get a shoe and it fits. And so you think that it's made for you and you go for a run and it's like fine for that first run because your first foray, maybe you're like, I'm a marathoner on the road, but this is my first trail run. I'm going to go for 5 miles. And it's totally fine for 5 miles.
Mhm.
And then you take it out for another trail run like 2 weeks later. And at this point, you're probably close to your return date on that shoe. And you go for 10 miles and you realize that it's not the shoe for you. And
Mhm.
that's where a lot of my used inventory is coming from. It's coming from experiences just like that, where someone is either just getting into trail running or they're experimenting because they have a race on different terrain coming up. And so while they may be able to get away with, a lesser lug on their hometown trails, they know that they're going to be somewhere where it's like potentially muddy or it's a steeper incline and that they're going to need, different features in a shoe. And it can take a long time to really hone in on what your shoe is. And then there's also the whole your shoe on XYZ course might be different from your shoe on ABC course. And so you go through, rounds and rounds of experimentation. And this happens not only with footwear, it happens, with basically anything that touches your body, right? Like a hydration pack that you wear once or twice might be totally fine, and you get to the 3rd time where now you've stuffed it with, 20 times more gels and an extra layer and, all of your required gear for whatever the race is, and you discover that when it's loaded to capacity, you can feel the reservoir against your back, and that's unpleasant, or it's chafing you around your neck, or, there's just so many areas for potential trouble, and it can take getting deep into owning an item before you have any visibility on if it's gonna work for your 50K, 100K, 100 miler, whatever it may be.
And I love that it's just accessible for it makes it accessible for either beginners into the sport or people, like, just trying out new new shoes or something, right? Like, maybe you are a avid trail runner or something, but you can get on this website and see like, "Oh, look at that. Like, maybe I do wanna try this product or that," or it's that marketplace for you where you feel like you can try something new, you can buy it at full price whenever because it's time for you to do something new because maybe they changed the shoe you love or something. And now you know you have a place to go if it doesn't work out. If you're like, "All right, suddenly they changed this shoe, I bought it, now it doesn't work for me. Now I'm out." Plus back to the drawing board of finding what does work for me. But you have a place to go as that user to know it's gonna get another life and maybe recoup some of your funds.
Right, because it's never fun when you, did lay out, 4 or $500 to kind of refresh your trail running kit and you find out that some of the things aren't going to work for you, and instead of being out all of it because you can't return it, particularly for things that are in very good condition and very expensive up front, I can buy them from people for, sometimes half of what they paid. And so, it's not a bad deal when all is said and done, and, the person that bought the item and it didn't work out, they win. Environmentally, the earth wins. And then some other runner who loves that item and knows they love that item might score an epic deal. And so, it's really kind of like the triple threat of winning over here at Take Two Trail. And that's what we're trying to get at. I mean, I have a pair of Norda sneakers, which typically run in like the $300+ category that are brand new, unworn, and someone's going to get them for, more than $100 off just because someone else, I don't know the reason always
Mhm.
necessarily, but they came from a local runner and I don't know if they missed their return date or they, just never made it out the door in them. Maybe their sport changed, who knows? But I now have them, and so someone else can get, a sick deal on a pair of Nordas.
Yeah, which is wild because again, like, we're talking getting entry level kind of shoe in that 150, $180 range, then you get into these really advanced shoes that are around that $300. I think Norda was the first ones to come out really with at that price point, and everyone was kinda like, "Uh, yeah, good luck out there, like, what are you thinking coming out with a shoe that's that expensive?" I believe a new running store opened here in Truckee maybe last summer or something, and I believe they were carrying Norda. It's like, "Wow, you're coming out big, like, being a brand new store plus, like, carrying this shoe," but
People are loving them, though.
yeah, I've heard people are definitely, it's getting good feedback, and also sometimes with these brands, they're trying to really work on the life cycle of a shoe, but no matter what you do, it's still gonna have that life cycle, so there has to be a second option for what to do when that shoe is, like, done, and there's a lot of talk in the outdoor industry about what people are doing when the shoe is really, really done. How do we recycle things and, kinda help with circularity, sustainability, and all of that? Because as outdoor enthusiasts, whatever your sport is, gear has a life cycle. So, how are we keeping our gear updated, especially when it can actually be like a safety issue if you're not safety or health, right? If it's not fitting correctly or whatnot, like you do need to replace it at times, and it's on our mind of how often we're replacing gear and whatnot. But yeah, seeing all these different options come up is super inspiring, and I think that people have a hard time also shopping used when it comes to, like, gear like this, especially shoes. So, I feel like what you're doing with Take to Trail is, again, just kinda opening those doors and making people realize, like, it's not you're not just going to Goodwill or something and putting on an old stinky pair of, like, sneakers. They're
Definitely not.
Yeah, they haven't been, put through the ringer, and you're, like, trying to sell this shoe for almost cost or something, so it is a way I feel like that can get people used to that like, quote, unquote, "secondhand market," even though, like you said, it may not even be secondhand. It could just be
Right.
older or stuff from a store or someone never used it, put it on in their house and couldn't return it, whatever the case.
Right. So, one of the things that I'm trying to do is leaning into the fact that I know my history does not include a whole lot of purchasing secondhand goods. And it's
Mhm.
because there's this ick factor, right?
Yeah.
Like in a lot of places, particularly in markets where there's more people supplying the Goodwill than purchasing from the Goodwill, like you literally walk in and it smells stale.
Mhm.
And, because they have so much inventory. And then it's, like, vaguely organized, so it's hard to find what you wanna get. Like, you go in for shoes, and you might just be looking through piles and piles of shoes, many of which you're like, "You really can't wear these anymore," right?
Yeah.
Because people do look in their closet and go, "Well, I'm not using this anymore," and it's because they stopped running in the shoes because they were giving them shin splints, and then they just threw them into a donation bag, and they end up on the shelf at Goodwill, and, it's difficult to get away from that ick.
Mhm.
And so, like, it is a major goal to try and make sure not only am I going through processes to make all of my gently used items feel as new as possible by, there's a lot of cleaning that happens. I spent many hours yesterday scrubbing like Hoka Tecton X's that just came in from a user,
Wow.
and another pair of Mafate Speeds. And, those are like very popular shoes that just happened to not work out for this guy in Boise. And now they were sent to me, and I soaked and scrubbed. And, I mean, I literally take the insoles out of shoes. I scrub the insole top and bottom. I scrub the part of the shoe, the sole, like the insole where the insole sits,
Mhm.
so that they're not gross. And
Mhm.
let me tell you, I know every single person that has a cat that has ever sent me a shoe, because I will pick the cat hair out with the tweezers if I have to, because I know how I would feel if I
Mhm.
was purchasing something that said it was gently used and it looks like it was your cat bed, you
Yeah.
know? No one wants your cat's hair digging into their foot.
Yeah.
So I really am taking a lot of steps to not only present items in their best possible light, but to truly get them to your home and your feet and your body feeling pretty darn new.
Well, speaking of light, I'm seeing your background now, and I mean, you guys, it's like a store back there. She's got shelves of shoe boxes, a rack there with some, I'm assuming, clothes and vests and things like that, but
Yep.
the whole studio light to take good pictures. So it's like, yeah, you might see something online on all these other sites that the photos look good, and then you receive it, and you're like, huh, that's not exactly how the photo was depicted or whatnot, but
That
hearing just your process is like, yeah, you're gonna take good photos of it, but we can tell that you also took care of the product first. And about like well, I guess before we dive further into, like, Take to Trail and how people obviously can, like, find it and how they can get involved, whether it's on the purchase side or sell stuff or something themselves. I am curious really, like, how it all started. You mentioned you weren't, like, a heavy secondhand, person beforehand. I am not either, and I try to be, and I think yeah, it's hard to get out of that ick factor, especially when it's comes to something like shoes or something very close to your body, and also, there was maybe a lot of sweat involved, right? These are active sports and, you're like, "Was this used in the summer in Tahoe, like, where it's dry and hot or whatnot?" So, yeah, it's like it's hard to get your mind around it, but, where did running even come into your life in the first place?
So part of how Take Two Trail came about is because my running background really came from obstacle course racing. Prior to having kids, I recreationally ran. I was just, an average gym girly. Sometimes I would, just it was a nice day, I would go for a run, and that was kind of the extent of it. Don't even think I had a GPS watch until I was into obstacle course racing. Um, in my mid 30s, I found obstacle course racing as a function of CrossFit, basically. I'd started at a CrossFit gym because it was the only place I could get to a class at 5 a.m. It was like the only thing in my area that offered a 5 a.m. And with two small kids and a husband that commuted into New York City every day, like I needed to be home by 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, so that 1 hour 5 a.m. class was the winner.
Wow.
And I was invited to do a Spartan race at City Field. And that was a little bit of a gateway drug for me into running more than, like a 5K type thing at a time. And I rose through the Spartan system doing their stadium race, which is the shortest, all the way up to their ultra, which the first one that I did was 32-ish miles, so around a 50K. And then I got into the overnight obstacle course racing with Tough Mudder had run a series for a while called The Toughest Mudder, and it started as an 8-hour overnight race starting at midnight. It grew within a couple of years to a 12-hour overnight. And that is where the gear started getting kind of out of control. Um, One of the things that is very necessary in overnight obstacle course racing, because you're in and out of water obstacles and it's, never sunny at night. You don't get that warming benefit, is there's a lot of wetsuits. Now, I will
Mm.
tell you, if someone is, I'm not getting into the wetsuit business. I don't want to be the OCR supply store because I know what happens in those wetsuits and I know what water they have been through. And, like when you have a back zip wetsuit and you're running for, 12 hours overnight, it's a little hard to relieve yourself without assistance. And you
Mhm.
don't always have assistance in the middle of the course. So I don't want any of those wetsuits. Um,
I love
but
that, yes.
it changed when I kind of left obstacle course racing as a combination of, losing interest in the sport a little bit. The sport really suffered in the immediate post-COVID days, and so, racing the overnight stuff, like, it was really lonely. At one point in time, you could always see 10 or 15 other people when you were running overnight. Come, I don't know, 2022, like, you could get to an obstacle as a very small woman, and it's one of the obstacles that really requires an additional person for you to execute, and, like, you're standing on the side of a water pit for 20 minutes waiting for someone, and then the
Ugh.
person that comes up is your competition. There were just all these kinds of issues that I was like, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
And during that COVID period was the first time I had done a time-based race, on a, like, 1.1 mile loop or something insanely short. Um, and I really was like, "Okay, so I actually can run without having to stop for obstacles, without getting bored out of my mind." And I dove a little bit deeper. And then I got to this past fall with Javelina, I was packing, and I was like, I had this collection of headlamps because in obstacle course racing, we had to wear a headlamp because you're constantly throwing your body over walls and carrying heavy things. So, like, a waist lamp or a chest lamp's not really a feasible option. So it's always on your head, and they always gave me a horrific headache. And you had to tether them to your bib or your wetsuit with paracord, because when you're jumping off of, some huge obstacle into water, it flies off your head. And so you also always had backups in case your paracord failed. So I'm going to pack for Javelina with zero interest in ever putting a headlamp actually on my head again. And I'm like, but I have like 6 Black Diamond Storm headlamps because I probably had like the 400, the 450, the 500, the 500R, right? Like I evolved with the product because maximum visibility was always important to me. But now I don't want any of them. And it was a combination of that packing for that particular race and a friend going through an experience where she was having a difficult time returning a hydration belt that she hated and had purchased. It was like sold out everywhere. She ordered it from a small running store in Texas. We live in Connecticut. She got it, hated it, contacted the store about returning it. They weren't so warm to that. She then lost the lid to one of the bottles, and I was like, "Well, I would take it because I actually love that belt, and I know I can just replace the lid for $2." And it really got me thinking about how much gear is purchased and for whatever reason can't be returned. Whether it is you lost a part or it just didn't fit you right. Or like, I don't know, you just changed your mind. You had been planning on doing a race in the desert and then you're like, hold up. I am never going to need to carry a 10-liter pack because I am not going to run in the desert. And so you have this pack that you're like, I'm never going to use it again. So I wanted to provide a really simple and concentrated way to purchase those perfectly good, barely used items, and that is Take Two Trail.
That's awesome. I love the, like, evolution of it all, and I don't know, to me, it just kind of proves that you don't have to have this idea that's been stewing forever. You don't have to be a lifelong, like, person in this sport or living this certain lifestyle or something to be able to carve a space in whatever it is, whether it's a niche or not, right? You can just have an idea
Right.
and start to do it. Obviously, we know there's tons of other, like, no, it's not that easy. You don't just have to have an idea and do it, because what goes into that, what kind of resources do you need to really start it, this, that, and the other. But bigger picture saying, like, have an idea, talk to people, and try to, like, get it out there, figure out what you really might need, because maybe it isn't a huge amount of resources or money or something that you need to really just get started, and, like I said, get that word out there, talk to some more people, and kinda test the idea out. And so how did that look for you when you started, like, "I really am gonna test this out and see what it can do"? Did you just start, like, collecting some stuff,
So
or first did you, like, have your things and reach out to like, list them, or
this is all very kind of very close to home from the outset. So when I first had this idea, I was like, let me actually go see when I dig through my gear how many items I find that are, I think, perfectly good for someone else to use. And it was something like 35 or 40 items because there were things like I have I have very strong preferences in my hydration situations. And while I love my Osprey Dyna 1.5, that is my like daily running vest, I very strongly dislike the reservoirs that come with the Dyna packs.
Mm.
Historically, they have like this plastic bar across the
Mhm.
back, not just the slider top that Hydra Pack has. And I could always feel it, especially if there was anything else in my pack. And so I would always buy a separate Hydra Pack reservoir. And once I was buying a separate reservoir, I was like, well, I'm going to buy the insulated one because I also do much better with my hydration if I can drink cold stuff. So I was buying the insulated reservoir, but the insulated reservoir comes with an insulated hose. And I find the insulated hose rubs the bejesus out of my neck unless it's very properly stowed, and who has time to like be thinking about that in the middle of a race. So I literally had like this stack of, I mean, I've probably had 5 Dynavests over the last 10 years or so. So I have like this pile of reservoirs and then a separate pile of just hoses. And then all of I went through a period where I experimented with gel flasks. And so like that ended up not being a great option for me. So I had gel flasks. And then I had just like all sorts of random. items. I had shoes. I went through a period where everyone was super stoked on the Hoka Speed Goats,
Mhm.
and I was like, "I'm gonna get into the Speed Goat," but when I was looking online, I also found the Mafate Speeds, and so I bought both, and I ran for probably, like, a month and a half or 2 months in the Mafates before I realized that, like, I had spent the prior, I don't know, 5 or 6 years in natural toe-shaped shoes, Ultras and Topos, and my foot just, like once I got to north of 15 miles, my foot got angry that it couldn't splay the way it wanted to. So, while I had worn those Mafates past where I would sell them to anyone, I had the speed coats that I never even put on. And I was like, this is crazy. And there's no way I'm alone. And I started talking to friends and I found out I wasn't alone. And sometime probably in like November, I registered the business name. I felt very strongly about not launching the website at all until I had a robust inventory. I didn't want people to log on to the website and see like that I had like 6 pairs of shoes and 2 hydration packs and a handful of reservoirs. So I started figuring out how I was going to amass a sizable inventory of both men's and women's products, all of the accessories, like literally all the stuff we use in trail running. So, lighting solutions, hydration solutions, apparel, socks. I guess that's apparel. Watches. I've come across a huge number of watches. There's like 6 of them sitting on my desk right next to me. Um, and I was acquiring gear through some local race directors who I was friendly with, just from regular racing scene stuff. Talk to them. They let me come to their events. They put something out in their pre race email saying this person is going to be there. Bring your gently used gear. And people did. The first race I went to, I think there were 97 runners and I left with 55 items. And
Wow.
that was like from day one, there was proof in this pudding. And then
Mhm.
it was like, how am I going to now sell them? And I'm not going to pretend that I am some internet wizard or salesperson or any of these things. So I started figuring out what it is that makes me want to buy something online. And the clean photography came up as, a driving factor for how I make my purchase decisions, and also one of the main reasons I don't buy things frequently on Poshmark, eBay, and Facebook Marketplace, because the pictures you see on there, like, you see the cat hair that's sitting on the carpet next to where the person laid the item to take a picture of it.
Mhm.
So I was very committed to making sure I had a high quality photography. So I hired a photographer for my first round because I could not teach myself how to be that level of photographer in the time frame that I wanted to because I also needed the inventory I was amassing to remain relevant. Um, so from there, it was really just putting, the pieces together. I hired a designer to design the initial website. It's actually getting a massive refresh in the next couple of weeks, to be a little more sales oriented because the initial was more about telling the story of what Take Two Trail was and giving people a way to sell me their items.
Mhm.
Now it is a store. For the moment, there's a store link on the top bar. Going forward, it will basically open you into a store. Um, and through the process of amassing inventory, I realized that not only were there people with brand new inbox shoes sitting there, waiting for a life, not even a new life, there's a lot of inventory that is sitting in the back room of small running shops that is perfectly good that the owners had, bought wholesale and never sold. And so I started calling my local running stores, and running stores were in some cases donating their excess inventory to me. And in other cases, like the return inventory, someone buys a pair of shoes, they return it to the store. The store doesn't necessarily have the bandwidth or resources to get them cleaned properly, rebox so they look new, and to sell them in good conscience. And that is where another huge chunk of my inventory came from.
There's just so much in that I'm like, again, one of those things that's like you don't have to know everything first, right? Like I
No.
said, we know that starting stuff takes a lot, and whether that's support or again the money or this, that, and the other, but there are ways to kinda just go in and start doing it, and that's what everyone says, right? You don't wait for it to be perfect. Start talking to people, start putting things out there, come up with a landing page, and to, like, yeah, tell your story and kind of figure it out as you go. Well, yeah, we just don't have to be perfect before we start, whether that is, like, on the business end of having everything set and ready to go before you launch or, like, getting into that new sport or hobby, like, you don't have I mean, h how else can you get started into
Right.
it? Like
It's the same thing, if you think philosophically, they say in racing, especially in an ultra, you're better showing up healthy and little bit undertrained than fully cooked and overtrained and, not really ready to go. So I started this undertrained. I did not know anything about e-commerce other than from my user experiences. I didn't know anything about digital marketing when you're 47 years old and spent 16 years basically raising children and only posting life events on Facebook. I knew nothing about any of that. So early on, there's a lot of, well, figuring out what you don't know so you can
Mhm.
find support in those areas. And I know that my personal strength is I'm an idea factory. And I also know that that means sometimes I need people to go pump the brakes. Let's refine this. I think that one of the places a lot of companies get into trouble is they go on to step 2 before step 1 is really kind of well done.
Mhm.
And so I'm trying not to do that, and that's why Take 2 Trail is starting as trail running.
Mhm.
And there is the name is intentional to allow for expansion into other trail-based sports and activities. It could, Take 2 Trail could be for mountain biking, it could be for camping, hiking, backpacking, overlanding. I mean, there's all these places that it could go and, until sitting here right now, I had actually not thought about skiing takes place on a trail.
Yeah,
So it
that's what
could,
I was just thinking.
it could go to skiing and especially ski gear. I mean, it's so freaking expensive, right? So I'm gonna get the basics going and working well and make sure that not only does the concept work, that I figure out, like, warehousing is not something that's ever been on my radar before. And I'm getting, little insights into it now as not only do I have this inventory, but when I get an order, some of the things I have in my inventory are unique, some of them are not. I mean, I was able to rescue a slew of Nike, dry fit T-shirts from a promotional company. Like, they had done a run of shirts for an organization and were left with, like, I don't know, 12 small navy blue, 4 in a large, and they just had, like, odds and ends left over. I can't just go and grab, like, navy blue T-shirt and sell it. I have to figure out, like, how am I storing things and SKU numbers and all of this so that I can pull from, my inventory when something is sold, and then how do you, handle the back end of that as in terms of listed inventory? Are you archiving things? There's just so much. And so you don't need to major in the minors right off the bat, and you don't need to know everything. You just need to be open to knowing what you don't know.
I that is great. I am, like, marking that right now as a clip and maybe working into the title, like, that was so good because it stops so many people from doing anything, from getting started, and or also, I'm I feel like the same as you as the idea factory, and it's very hard to not, like, get over my skis on, "Oh, the next idea, let's go ahead and go do this, do that," and, like, slow down, take a breath, and say, "Hold on, let's keep working on this over here," and kinda fine-tuning that before jumping in. I'm not good at it at all. I've already, jumped into a million things and I'm always, like, diving head first, but I think I've hit burnout so often too in the last, like, few years that it's I think I say this at the beginning of, like, every year where I'm like, "Well, I think I finally figured it out. Like, I need to just kinda slow down and, like, yeah, I wanna do all these things and show up here and there, but I just, like, can't. I really do need to narrow the focus down a little, and it's not about, like, niching down or giving up on this or that, but just, like, really trying to cool the jets and keep working on the one thing going forward and, like, keep those ideas and things close but yeah, it can be a hard line, I think, to walk for those people who are very aspirational, have a lot of those ideas, and maybe don't even know which one to, like, start with.
Right, my undiagnosed ADHD shows itself every single time.
Yeah,
You know,
same.
like, it's very easy to dive in and work hard on the things that you're super interested in, and, for me, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a consumer. I love shopping for this stuff online. I
Mhm.
love looking at the liquidation websites and figuring out if, XYZ store closing in whatever town elsewhere in the country, it has inventory that is I'm going to be able to sell, and because they are liquidating it, they're selling it so dirt cheap that I can pass that along to other runners. And it helps me to feel like I'm servicing the community that I've been a part of for, a decade or so. And not that I'm aging out of, because as long as the Ludos and things are out there in the world showing us that trail runners can thrive well into their 50s, I don't know, perimenopause has, like, been whacking me with, some sort of crazy stick lately, and and it just makes it so, you know I lost my train of thought because that's the perimenopause thing. No, but seriously, like, you know, I the ADHD is so present because it's so easy to dig into the parts that you like
Mhm.
and then ignore the parts that you don't like.
Yeah.
I am so thankful that I'm starting a business in the day of digital record keeping because I have not saved a receipt from a purchase. I mean, I have, my Venmo receipts basically from every race that I've gone to and purchased inventory from people. And if it wasn't for that, I mean, I'd probably be screwed. I'd have no idea whatsoever what I paid for XYZ item.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah, it's just, hard, like I said, focusing in, narrowing in on something, but I think that, like I said, what you said, you don't need to major in all the minors first, kinda
and
find
I
that.
figured out
Yeah, go for it.
my point that I was losing was at my age, I'm not certain how much longer I have running in the ultra running community, or at least in the way that I would like to be.
Yeah.
And so this is like gives me a way to remain present and, get to races that I will never would want to or never have the opportunity to race. Like I get to stick around even if, the running comes to an end at some point in time.
Right, keeps you connected to that group, and I think that's, a good way to think about things, whether it's about, like, aging out or doing this or that, but just sometimes it's nice to have those different connections where you're not fully in it, and you
Right.
don't have to experience it from this or that, but, like, how can I be around without having to do? Because whether it's just your interest change, you just decide, like, "I don't wanna, run that distance anymore, but I still wanna be a part of the community," and I think for people who are really full on into certain communities, whatever bubbles of things that is something that we think about, like, well, what happens when I, like, or if I don't want to anymore? And obviously you can completely leave it, but I know sometimes that keeps me hanging around things that maybe are not the best for me right now or for whatever, but I wanna be a part, and it's like, "Okay, well, how do I serve this community that I love, that I feel like gave so much back to me, but I just can't show up in the same way," you know?
Right. There is 0 chance on this planet that I would ever participate in a race like Hard Rock. I'm just not cut out for 2 nights of no sleep, so I
Yeah.
guess that puts UTMB in that same bucket. But I love the people that can do it. I'm so
Mhm.
inspired by them, and they're such badasses, and if I can continue to serve the community that has given me so much, even in places where I could never set foot before, that's, just more doors that Take Two Trail has opened.
That's and that's why I feel like I am doing what I'm doing too. There's so many people I wanna talk to and be connected to, but it's like, I'm not going to become this ultra runner and marathoner, but like you just said, what these women do, these people do is incredible, and I wanna talk to them and know them as humans, and so, like, how can I be, connected or a part or support? And that I talk all the time about not being a huge runner, and what we talked about in our intro call was, like, coming up in June is TrailCon, a big event here around a couple races that take place in Tahoe, and I last year my family was in town, so I didn't go, like, check it out at all. It was the first year, but my thoughts through it were a lot like, well, I mean, I'm not a runner, so I don't know if there's a lot there for me, but first of all, I still, like, love to nerd out on gear, but it was also just the people that are gonna be there, like, I wanna go and check it out and, yeah, support what these people are doing, like, crazy efforts. It's, like, super cool to be around. So
Yeah,
it's like you don't even have to be fully immersed into that world, like we mentioned before, to if you have something that's on your mind, interesting, like just start to kind of explore that idea.
absolutely. I'm not sure that I would have been able to get Take Two Trail off the ground in the absence of, being funded, self-funded, because I know getting money from external sources is very often a roadblock for people. But I think that the networking that is available to everyone because of the internet does make it so that there's a greater possibility that any idea can really launch. You may have to prove concept in a more theoretical form than I had to, but that doesn't mean that you still can't.
Mhm. And so what does your day-to-day kind of look like right now with running this and getting this off the ground, trying to collect stuff from people,
A
from
lot of
stores?
ADD.
Yeah.
I mean, I spend parts of every day putting out feelers to various race organizations, run clubs, things like that, looking for races that have large registrations because those are the races that it makes the most sense for me to actually, commit a weekend to go to, especially when there's travel involved. Like it needs to kind of, pay for itself in some way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
So there's that angle of things. There is the inventory management. I'm now in a place already where I have a ever changing inventory. Orders come in, so things go out. People are submitting inventory to me. So I'm constantly receiving items, have to inspect them, then clean them, then photograph them. So it's, constantly preparing inventory so that hopefully once a week or so we can do what's happening behind me, which is
Yeah.
getting it all shot so that it can get onto the website. And then there's like the actual business stuff. And like I said, thank goodness for digital record keeping because I'm not great at that kind of stuff. But, I'm still figuring out like what taxes I have to pay who. I'm still figuring out things like I realized in the last couple of days that I wanted to be able to show people on the website their actual impact of buying from Take Two Trail. So when the refresh of the website happens in the next couple of weeks, there's a running banner in the middle that's going to show the total pounds of impact purchases have diverted from landfills.
Wow.
So as of right now, like as of when I did it 2 days ago, granted we're in our infancy, we have diverted 58 pounds of
Wow.
landfill matter from a landfill, but it has to start somewhere, so I'm
Yeah.
okay with that number. Now, unfortunately, what that meant is for all few hundred items that are listed in Take Two Trail's website, I now have to find the weight of
Yeah.
because I have to go back into every single listing and do that. So, there's just so many pieces of it, right? Like
Mhm.
there's the business, there's the store, there's the website, there's the accounting. And so, in some ways it actually plays well to having a limited attention span, because I can jump around based on what feels good. And then there are days like yesterday where, I mean, I spent most of my day scrubbing shoes. It just, it comes with the territory.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, um, just chasing those squirrels around,
Yep.
right? It's like when there's a lot of moving pieces, it can kinda help for sure, where you're like, "Alright, well, now I can go over here," instead of, like, stay in that, like, tedious task of just doing this or that, and having something actually, like, physical that you can do is, like, some days you need that. You're like, "No, I just need to sit here and clean the shoes, like, I can't
Yeah.
focus, like,
And
so just keep me literally attached," so I'm sure that can be very helpful.
and the whole content creation thing, I mean, I I'm so grateful to the girl that's helping me, or woman, I should say, that's helping me with my, socials, because she has been largely the person who's in front of the camera. I've always been very camera shy in general. But, we had a gorgeous day here 2 days ago. It was in the high 70s, and my, social woman and I were discussing, starting a series of videos related to pooping in the woods, because that is such a major part of trail running. And I have something that will be coming to events with me called the shit kit, which I can tell you more about if you want to know in a minute.
Yes.
And in order to do that, like, my husband shot a video of me being ridiculous running through the woods and urgently using a tree, and then what the aftermath of that is, because it's such a relatable trail running thing. And, if you can't laugh at the realities of what happens out on the trail, you don't belong there anyway, so.
Yeah, totally, and I mean, if anyone's out there listening who maybe isn't a avid or long, like, trail runner right now, don't let that scare you. It's that's you don't have to
No,
do
and
that in your
actually,
3-mile run outside of the city or something.
yeah, right. So I last summer had tried to get more people trail running in my community. There's not a ton of options that are hyper, hyper local. And the trail network that's closest to us doesn't have an outhouse even. Like, there is no option. And I know that that is one of the chief reasons that women in particular
Yeah.
don't trail run. It's scary. Like, what do I do? How do I do it? Are people going to see me? And so I organized this at first to be at a trailhead I knew had a recycling toilet or a composting toilet, so that people could at least be a little bit more comfortable with
Mhm.
it. And then, because I'm going to TrailCon and Broken Arrow and, oh, sugar, I should know the name of this one because 'cause I'm running at Rock the Ridge. I wanted to have a promotional item that I could give out at races, especially when people are selling me things that really embody kind of the whole what Take Two Trail is, right? Like, um we are keeping things out of landfills longer, and my everyone that has ever crewed for me knows that I carry what I call a shit kit, which is, historically has been a Ziploc bag that is used until the top never works, and it, doesn't work, and it has holes in it, and it has mini rolls of toilet paper, and then the dog poop bags that we found to be inadequate for carrying their initial content, or intended contents. And so I found a company in Boulder that makes pouches from upcycled banners and billboards. So I have these pouches that I will be giving out that are water resistant. So if you sweat all over them, or you have like a water crossing in your race or something, your toilet paper stays dry. And it comes with these compostic bags, which are made to decompose faster than an orange peel, which
Wow.
most of the compostable things that are sold as compostable are not home compostable. They require commercial composting facilities, which some communities have and some don't.
Mhm.
Um, and this is a way that someone can literally, after they collect their toilet paper, which is the intent of the included bag, collect their toilet paper and throw it away when they get home. And so, the bag itself will decompose. And so that is, upholding the values of Take Two Trail. The upcycled little pouches, they were just gonna end up like, this is material that would have been in a landfill, and instead it actually has a use, and that decreases, its resource consumption from start to finish. So,
That's really cool and very interesting about the bag and the compostable, and that's, again, so tricky when we get into what we were taught and learned about, like, recycling back when we first got
yeah,
the whole talk
the
about it
big
where everyone was like, "You think you're doing it, but then really you're not because there's all these actual rules that apply," and so, yeah, very interesting that half of the stuff, yeah, probably you need more than just,
right,
like people
right.
think composting is just, like, throw it out
Throw it in
and
a pile.
yeah, and just, like or if I leave it in the dirt, like, it'll take care of itself kind of thing, and it's like, there's so much more that goes into it. I don't know much about it at all. Like, I didn't know, the difference between kinda commercial grade or household, so that's very, very interesting and something to kinda pay attention to. You should have a tagline, a little stamp on those or something that's like, "We'll help you take care of your shit." So, like, here's the
It
bag, and
does
then
say
we give us your shit. I
I
love it.
reinvented the logo to include the name
Yes!
and the shit kit.
That's so
And,
cool.
you bring up the, like, people don't know what to do with their gear, or items in general, right? Like, everyone thinks that everything can be recycled at this point as long as it has the triangle on the back,
Mhm.
and that I mean, nothing could be further from the truth, and so one of the things that I'm doing, when I go to races is bringing, well, I'm ultimately bringing boxes, but I can collect shoes that are too worn for me to purchase from someone and resell. They can just leave them with me,
Mhm.
and I have a recycling partner who does a combination of things. They downcycle some of the materials, like shoes that are truly end of life and have no use to anyone. They're wholly the sole's falling off, whatever. Well, that's the kind of stuff that's actually in the stuffing of your car seat or your
Mm.
dog bed.
Mhm.
And so, it's some of it, I think they said it's somewhere around 10% of shoes are actually end of life when they get them, and that's what happens to those. There is also an enormous segment of what people think are donated goods that, in many cases end up on the shores of undeveloped nations because people think they're doing the right thing, and charity organizations also, like, sincerely believe they're doing the right thing sending these items to XYZ place, but then that place doesn't have the infrastructure to actually get those shoes on feet. So the
Right.
partner that I'm working with actually has partners in some of these countries that they make sure the shoes go on feet. So just because there's not a bit of tread left on your speed goat, that doesn't mean just because it's not good for a trail run anymore, that doesn't mean it's not good for someone to walk to school in.
Mhm, mhm,
Like there are places that are really in need of a decent shoe
mhm.
because a speed goat that has 300 miles on it, no, it's not great for running in anymore, but it's perfectly fine for functioning and existing in so that you're not walking barefoot, through the street.
Right.
Um, and I also on the website am offering the ability for people to order retold recycling's uh, textile recycling bags. So there's an option to buy one or a three pack, and you basically get this compostable poly mailer that you can fill with up to 5 pounds of textile. So, the holy t shirt that you can no longer even wear as pajamas because, like, the arm, there's like this giant hole that your whole arm goes through, or it can like literally as long as the underwear is washed. I mean, we all grow in and out of underwear, the elastic gets shot, whatever. These things can be recycled.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I have an option that people can order their retolds bags through our website, through Take Two Trail, and send them off to be properly managed. Um, yeah,
That's awesome. I love that you are yeah, it's not just about, like, buying and selling other gear, but you're really trying to fill in the gaps and help accessibility to all these other things. It's not
yeah,
just a consignment, here we go, but how can we, like you said, just save the stuff out of the landfill, whether it's
right.
gonna be resold or it's gonna be repurposed into something else, and we definitely need more of that and getting that out in there because, yeah, like you said, a lot of times people might look at their stuff and say, "Well, I can't run in it it's, I'm gonna toss it, whatnot, because I also can't give it to a thrift store because they don't want it because they still want a certain level of, like, usage, but there are
Yeah,
other places in the world that will take it, and, yeah, so there's just, like, so many different points in those life cycle of, like, "Is this really done? Is this really, really done,
right.
done, done? Like, let's do everything we can first." And then there's also a place to actually recycle it into something else that can be used,
Right.
so
I think I make something like 3 cents off of the retold recycling bags, like, it's not
yeah.
most of this actually has very little to do with me trying to, I want the business to be successful, but not
Mhm.
because it's going to change my lot in life. I
Yeah.
want this business to be successful because it is that triple threat situation where it can help the planet, it can help people that feel like they lost money because something didn't work out and they were just trying to, try a new sport or a sport that they love. And it helps people get into the sport in a much less expensive way. And the reality is, across the board, it actually benefits the brands as well because you might have someone that is curious about like the Tecton X shoe, which is probably, I don't know for certain, but it must be up there in the price range of Hoka's offerings.
Mhm.
And someone might not be willing to drop a few $100 on a shoe that's an experiment. But if
Yeah.
they can get maybe, a shoe that someone else wore for 20 miles and decided that they're not going to be a carbon plate person, for half price, and then they discovered that the new buyer is a carbon plate person, they're not gonna buy their next shoe necessarily from me. They're gonna go directly to Hoka and buy the brand new in box one. So,
Yeah.
it really it serves such a wide audience, and, I was initially concerned with people feeling threatened or, companies feeling threatened by my selling stuff for less expensive than in some cases they can. But I'm not doing materials research, right? I don't have R&D scientists on the payroll developing space age foams that weigh nothing, don't absorb water. I'm building a website on a Shopify platform and providing as much useful information as I can. But people can still turn around and will still turn around and go to the brand's website and get the product descriptions for them and then see like, oh, I can buy this thing that has 10 miles on it for half price. And all of a sudden they're now a loyalist to that brand,
Mhm.
even if the first pair didn't come from it.
Absolutely, it's a great way to get people introduced to new brands and then have them become that loyal person
Yeah.
and customer and find something that works for them because they know now that they can support that brand. It works for them, and they also, can dive into the ethos and values of that brand, and is it someone they really want to support without that big upfront cost? But will you tell everyone, I guess, how to find you, the website, social media, follow along, and, interested to shop or sell or and all that the retold, all that information, and of course, you all know it will be linked, but, where do they go?
So the website is Take Two Trail, and it is the number two. So TAKE, the number two. TRAIL.com. And on the website, there's a submit your items and a shop button. So those are the, two paths to my functions basically. On Instagram, it is Take Two Trail. I am OCR, or no, I'm not OCR anymore. I changed that. I'm Jess Runs a Lot, but I only have one S. I'm And then there is also a Facebook that is Take Two Trail. There's a LinkedIn that is Take Two Trail. And then I do have a Substack, although I will say once the website went live, I don't think I've written anything since, so I need to go and update that. But there is a Substack that it talks a little bit about, how things kind of got to where they are. And that is also just Take Two Trail.
Awesome. Plenty of places to connect and get involved, somehow, like, so whether that's shopping, selling, or through the other resources that you have for recycling or, circularity and whatnot, so make sure you guys check out those show notes, go give Jess and Take to Trail a follow, and is there any places, events or anything, like, on the horizon in the next month, let's like, April, June, or I guess there's May in there too, any
Yep.
big things where people might be able to look out for you and come talk to
So
you?
For the spring, I'm gonna be pretty regional. I will be at, the Lake Mohegan Women's Trail Race in Fairfield, Connecticut, put on by Steep Endurance, and if you keep an eye on the Steep Endurance website, I will actually be at a handful of their events because they are so close to me in most cases. The biggest event regionally that I will be at is, Rock the Ridge. I will be at Packet Pickup, which I believe is Friday of race week. I think the race is Saturday, May 2nd, so that would make May 1st the day that I am there to do gear intake and collect your overused sneakers. So that's it for the spring, and then in June, I'm out to Broken Arrow and TrailCon, and then
Awesome.
from there, we will see what happens.
Love it. I hope, we can connect in June, except of whether that's actually at the event or hanging out, whatever. I gotta get it on my calendar so I can, yeah, at least check it, go to the village one day and see who's there and whatnot. So I hope to see you in Tahoe in June. But, like I said, everyone, go give Take to Trail a follow, gather up some of your gear maybe. And,
Bring it to me, sell it
yeah,
to me.
totally. Everybody, we will talk to you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks
Bye.
for having me.
You're welcome.